Hello everybody, Dr. Z checking in, and today is going to be a very interesting video. And video is not even the word for it, it's communication to others. It's just that we're using video, we're using YouTube, Vimeo, whatever mediums, written mediums, books, tapes, DVDs, whatever. Right now we just happen to be using YouTube as a medium of communication, and I think it's a very convenient medium of communication that pretty much allows anyone with any type of common sense or lack of common sense for their, to get on and express their opinions. I like to express my opinion, but I also like to back them up with facts, and I also like to back it up with science and research. So today's going to be interesting, but before we get started with today's topic, everybody, peace, power, prosperity, and most of all, love to you and your families. So the title of today's video is Message to the Mad Scientist. And I say that affectionately. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you know that I refer to the MDs, the medical doctors, the physician, myself included, as the mad scientist. Now, why have I given the name mad scientist? Because they really have lost their mind and gone insane. When you look at you look at the system, again, like I always say, the system, especially for chronic disease, is that of symptom suppression and disease management, not cure. Again, not cure. Even those people who would say, well, if you had pneumonia or a sinus infection or a bladder infection and we give you antibiotics, that, well, it killed the bacteria, therefore you are cured. You are not. All you have done is kill the bacteria that came on the scene as a result of crap that was in your system, toxic, acid, mucus, mucoid crap that's in your system that these parasites will feed on. They are nature's helpers. They are not our enemies. They're only our enemies when our immune systems are weak, where we can't fight against infection because of toxic acidosis, which lies at the core of most issues. So, I was having a discussion with one of the doctors in the hospital, very bright doctor, matter of fact, a couple of doctors, because I always like to challenge them, but I challenge them subtly, because if you go and blow their minds too much, then they think you're trying to show them up. This particular case was about, what were we talking about? We were talking about diabetes. And we were talking about type 2 diabetes. Now, as a neuropsychiatrist, the average physician thinks I don't study about diabetes. They think I stay in my little box of neuropsychiatry. But they don't know that I take my studies of medicine very seriously. That I still know my anatomy, my physiology, my biochemistry, my organic chemistry, my mathematics, the quantum physics, the metaphysics, the issues of vibration, enzymes, frequency. All of it was taken very seriously. You see, I didn't forget nothing unless I chose to forget. Does that make me smarter than the average physician? No. Does it make me better than the average physician? Yes, in some respects. Not a better human being, but more inquisitive, more curious, more into examining what is really going on and then getting to the heart of the matter and not playing blinders. Okay, this is not pin the tail on the donkey anymore, people. Doctors, physicians, MDs, it is time for you to wake up. Now, we have patients, and I'm trying to wake them up too, but we got to wake up both sides of the equation. The number one healing modality in the United States today is still allopathic medicine, and it is woeful. It is shameful. However, the doctors that are practicing this type of, quote, medicine and disease treatment have the knowledge, have the training, and have the capacity to think outside of the box, just like I have done and just like plenty of physicians have done. I would say now we're probably 10 to 15% of physicians are waking up and are doing something called complementary medicine, alternative medicine, holistic medicine. Listen, naturopathic medicine is at the top. Why? Because naturopathic medicine deals with detoxification, cleansing of the body, clearing of the mucus, clearing of the blockages, opening up the cells to cellular nutrition, bioelectric mineralization of the human body. All right, turning us on like electrical light bulbs. This brain is a light bulb. Zoom. That's why a lot my email addresses starts with Zoom Doc, Zoom Doctor, but the Zoom is zzz, like the switch, a slider, the dimmer, right? We push it down, that light bulb is dim. This is where most of us are, dim. This is where most physicians are thinking, dim. And then we push it up, zzz, and now, bingo. Now we've busted through all the morass, all the bullcrap, all the ignorance, all the foolishness. So, physicians are in a very tough place because, number one, their minds have been conditioned. They've been corralled, they've been misled, they've been bamboozled. They don't get a lot of training in nutrition. They have no idea what the hell they're talking about, what alkalization versus acidosis is. They understand the concept, but they don't understand how to put that in practice. They understand diseases like high blood pressure, sickle cell anemia, systemic lupus erythematosus, autoimmune, it's an autoimmune disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, degenerative arthritis, chronic pain conditions, degenerative back conditions, which are at an all-time high right now, renal conditions, heart problems. They understand all of the basics of it, but they don't really understand the conditions that lead to this. Because if they did, they would stop going after the diseases, which I describe as illusions, because they are nothing more than the body showing that there are conditions behind these, quote, conglomerations of symptoms that we have lumped into disease. And sometimes for intellectual purposes, it's okay to think with diseases, but then we have to think about what are the conditions that lead to diseases. So we're having a discussion about diabetes. Diabetes type 2 is very interesting, because with diabetes type 2, we're dealing with a few things. We're dealing with cells, remember, groups of cells working along the same line, forming a function, is a tissue. The tissue becomes glands, organs, muscles, brain, neurons, different types of fibers, blood cells, arteries, veins, the heart, the lungs, the liver. Isn't it wonderful that the cell, that the human body and all animals' bodies can start off as this small little embryo and then differentiate into this complex being that we call a human being. So, again, understanding the conditions that create these diseases, including mental diseases. Because I'm going to say that a lot of mental disorders can be cured with simple naturopathic techniques. But again, a physician doesn't have to go to school to be a naturopath. Matter of fact, some of the best healers in the world have never been to school. And I still will give them the title of naturopath, because they understand the conditions that lead to the disease processes. So going back to diabetes type 2, the pancreas, beta cells, produce a substance that we all know as insulin. Insulin goes traveling through the bloodstream and hits the cell. Knock, 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 knock. The cell says, who's there? Insulin. Insulin, why are you knocking on my door? Because I have to let you take in your sugar. Because without your sugar, you will not be able to function. Knock, knock. And the cell says, I'm not going to let you in today. The refusal of the cell to allow insulin to open the door to allow the glucose and the sugar into the cell, and specifically into the mitochondria, which is the nuclear factory of energy for the cell. Not the nucleus. That's where the genetic material is contained in the cell. We'll get to that in a second. So, if the cell is not responsive to the insulin, we call it insulin resistance, syndrome X, prediabetes, diabetes type 2. These are all the lowest going up to the worst, which is diabetes. And then if you have diabetes, now what happens? The blood sugar cannot be absorbed into the cell, so therefore it begins to mount. And too much sugar in the bloodstream leads to many problems. Blindness. It leads to cardiovascular disease. It leads to renal problems. The number one cause of people on dialysis today is due to diabetes. Diabetes is epidemic. So I asked the doctor, if this is the case, if the problem is the cell is not opening up its doors to the insulin, why are we using a medication like, for instance, metformin? Nothing against metformin. The doctors have to use it. They use it for their own purposes. It's fine if you're going to use it short term. But if you think you're going to cure diabetes type 2, and if you think you're going to control it, think again. There's no control of these diseases. These diseases will eventually control you, kill you, and of course create a lot of suffering on the way to you going 6 feet under. Now, I'm not about that. Homie, don't play that. So I said, what's the mechanism of action to metformin? I said, stop. I'll tell you what the mechanism is, because this does not increase the cell's receptivity to insulin so that the door opens, so the sugar can get into the cell and do its thing, right? Which is electrify, nutrify, and ultimately have the cell get into a state where it is making ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and then it can break it down to adenosine diphosphate, so ATP to ADP, and that breaking of the bond creates the energy that runs our bodies. That is the energy that runs our bodies. Sugar. So we can't say sugar is bad. We can't even say sugar is bad in a diabetic. What we can say that sugar just laying around and building up is bad. But is that what caused the problem? No. And does metformin address insulin, the sensitivity of the cells, the cell receptors, when the insulin is going knock knock and the cell says who's there and then refuses to let the insulin in? Well, that's a rude cell, right? That's a sick cell. And metformin does two things. It acts on the liver. Now the liver, oddly enough, has hundreds and thousands of functions of which we're just starting to really get a handle on. But you don't really need to go so intellectual with this stuff. Let's just say part of the liver's function is to store sugar. And it stores it in the form of glycogen. And when we need a quick burst of sugar, the muscles are going into an athletic event, the body will then release these stores of glycogen, break it down to glucose, and feed the sugar. So it's a quick storage mechanism for sugar. The long-term storage mechanism for sugar is what? Is fat. So the metformin gets and stops the liver from producing its glycogen. Sure, that will lower the blood sugar, but does it address the problem that is causing diabetes type 2? It is not. So physicians, why are we prescribing that? Especially long term. Why is it admission after admission in the hospital, they're going on metformin? I don't know. Second mechanism of action of metformin is to prevent sugar absorption from the gut. So it actually prevents nutrient absorption. If you think that we have become so sophisticated that we can just block sugar absorption without blocking other nutrients, think again. We have a complaint of a lot of people that are on metformin of weight loss. Well, of course, if your body's not able to absorb the sugar into the bloodstream because of the unnatural blockage from the medication. And see, this is unnatural, therefore it is toxic, and therefore it cannot, by design and by purpose and by law, cure a disease called diabetes type 2, which is not really a disease at all. It is a red flag. It is the body waving its flag saying, you have conditions that are behind diabetes type 2 that are creating this symptom complex. If you don't do something about it, it will do something to you. So the body is very, very interesting because it will signal to you when it's out of whack and out of balance. But out of whack and out of balance doesn't necessarily mean we have to give it a disease term. We could just call it a sugar metabolism disorder. Leave it at that. Well, we have to come up with fancy terms like diabetes and diabetes type 2, and there's type 1, which is really when the body's not making insulin at all, which is more serious and more difficult to treat, but curable. Of course, the modern mad scientists will tell you you can't cure diabetes type 1. I've seen it cured. I've read articles on it being cured. I've seen naturopathic reports of it being cured. I've seen AIDS cured. I've seen amyotrophic lateral sclerosis cured, sickle cell anemia cured. I've seen multiple sclerosis cured. Why? Because of the condition in the body that leads to these things. I have been talking until I've been turning blue in the face about toxic acidosis. And toxic acidosis will then set up inflammation, mucus, irritation of mucoid membranes, and this mucus then creates a growing ground for, number one, obstruction and blockage, number two, for parasites, bacteria, fungi, and viruses to feed on. So they come in and they feed on this stuff. And my contention is, once we clear out this mucus, we decrease the body's fire of inflammation, and we therefore neutralize toxic acidosis, that the condition of diabetes type 2 will go away. But the doctors are not trained to think that way. They have the knowledge to understand how the cure works, but they continue to wear the blinders. Now, there are doctors out there way smarter than I am. But there are doctors out there that have on the blinders. And you can be as smart as you want. If you have been conditioned, and most physicians have been, if you have been hypnotized, if you have been bamboozled, lied to, led astray, led them up down the wrong pathway, just like most human beings, so the patients are blind, the doctors are blind, and so therefore we have disease on top of diseases on top of diseases, one leading to the other, to the other, to the other, until we really have a point of no return, and that patient is termed terminal. And even some of these patients that are termed terminal, if they wake up and get on a program that neutralizes toxic acidosis, and therefore cools off the body's inflammation, and therefore allows the mucus to be drained, okay, and then allows the cells the freedom to function normally without this mucus, without this interstitial fluid, and without the backup of your sewer system that I call the lymph system, right? The GI tract also, remember the skin also, remember the lungs also, and for females, remember the uterus. And I always forget to mention the uterus is a detoxification organ. And that's a lot of times when we'll see uterine fibroids, and then we have the mad scientists, cutting out and doing way too many hysterectomies. And that's how they make money. God bless them. And I think some of them don't have the choice, and some of them do it because they know that they can make money from it. Listen, the doctor's like anybody else. You got the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? There are probably more good doctors than there are bad and the ugly, thank God. But there's plenty of them, of the bad and the ugly out there. So we have Dr. Robert Morse talking about the good surgeons. Yeah, but the good surgeons, but what about the bad and the ugly surgeons, right, that we don't need? What about all these unnecessary surgeries, the gallbladder surgery, the gastrointestinal surgeries because of colon cancer, because of Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, and it's all the same thing. Ultimately, in the background, we have toxic acidosis. We have because of what? Because of poor diet, because we've been lied to, because we continue to eat corn, grains, bread, white bread, organic bread. I don't care what kind of bread it is. It has gluten in it. It's bad for you. So we can't eat these things. We can't eat starchy foods and then mix the starchy foods with blood. Not a good combination. What is blood to meat? And most of the meat ain't worth eating right now. So I tell people, stop eating the meat unless you're going to eat organic, unless you're going to go through a detoxification program of at least 90 days to get all the crap out of your system, right? To detoxify, to alkalinize, to oxygenize, to nutrify, right? To get the sunlight going, to get the proper sleep, right? To get the electronics away from you so you don't have disturbing electromagnetic frequencies. All of this is part of the program of cure. And of course, the fruits, the vegetables, the Mother Nature's plants, her children, created with the union of the soil, which is now mineral depleted, especially here in the United States, which is why it is so important to learn about herbs, because they can replace some of those minerals. It's so important to learn about herbs because they can detoxify. It's so important to learn about foods. It's so important to learn about genetics. And so we have, the doctors can't treat, don't know how to cure diabetes type 2. It's easy to cure diabetes type 2. They can't cure gastroesophageal reflux disease. What is that? That's a fancy term for heartburn. That's a fancy term for indigestion. That's a fancy term for not hyperacidity in the stomach. It is hypoacidity. It's low acid, but low acid allowed to hang around for long periods of time begin to break down the stomach wall. Leaves the food undigested, so the food stays in the stomach longer, and now you put in the stress on the stomach and also on the duodenum, because that acid then gets shunted from the stomach into the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, where the pancreas comes in. It secretes its bicarbonates, its digestive enzymes, its protein breaking enzymes, and voila, we have digestion. So the stomach will use the acids, and then the duodenum will use the pancreatic enzymes, and then now we're off to the races. It goes through the microvilli in the small intestine, where nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream. All right, and then the waste from the food will get shunted into the colon, and then the colon has its own factory of bacteria, and that's why I'm a fan of using probiotics at the right time and the right probiotics. So I am not anti-probiotics like some others. I know that Dr. Morris, who's one of my mentors, is not a probiotic fan. I know that he's not a digestive enzyme fan. Well, I am in certain situations, because we know that digestive enzymes can get absorbed in the bloodstream and decrease inflammation. Do you want to go on digestive enzymes and use them every single day, 7 days a week, all the time? No, because again, you'll have a negative feedback onto your pancreas. Your pancreas will slow down because it said, well, we don't need to make those enzymes anymore because, hell, they're already there. So anytime you start to put things that the body makes naturally into the system, it will have a feedback, right? And it can start at the hypothalamus to the pituitary to the thyroid, to all the other glands, the master gland, the pituitary. It's the pituitary hypothalamus axis, but we don't have to know about that right now. I'm going to do a separate video on endocrinology and a brief visitation to human physiology, so that when I use these terms, and patients of mine and folks that want to get well, and MDs and practitioners and healers that want to learn about just basic physiology and just have an easy way of understanding and a conceptual framework to understand how the body is put together, how the body works, and some of the basic functions to make it easy to understand why these other healing modalities, I can't even call them healing modalities, treatment of disease modalities, ultimately do not cure anything. You have somebody with, so what's the treatment for heartburn? Well, number one, it's diet. You got to go raw foods. You can do a little bit of apple cider vinegar for a while that's been known to help, but I'm not a vinegar fan whatsoever. But again, I've had patients on it and they've done well on it. I've used it myself and my body does not handle vinegar. And I'm going to get into why that is in a little while. It's something that my daughter said, but we'll talk about that in a second. So they give antacids further low. This is what the physicians do. Now we have over-the-counter antacids, Tums, Rolaids, you name it. There's hundreds of them out there. And then you give Zantac and other prescription medications. They all do the same thing. They lower the acid. That's the wrong damn thing. That will not cure the disease, which is really low acid in the stomach. It's very rarely that the stomach is hyperacidic. It is low in acid because we're burning out the stomach. We're burning out these cells that make these enzymes because of a poor diet, because of, again, the lymph is backed up. Again, the cells themselves are not getting the proper nutrients. Again, there's acidosis, not in the stomach, but in the cells that are supposed to be making these acids. So again, toxic acidosis, inflammation, obstruction, cellular degradation, and ultimately diabetes type 2, gastroesophageal reflux disorder, high blood pressure, hysterectomies, gallbladders, gallstones. This is easy to cure. But what do? Well, you got gallstones. Why don't we send you to the surgeon? And what do surgeons do? They only do one thing. Should we do surgery or not? If they don't do surgery, they don't make money. They don't eat. Do we need a good surgeon? Yeah, if your gallbladder's inflamed and infected, it needs to be cut out. If you have gallstones and you're having some pain from that, and it's not a life-threatening situation, you can cure the gallstones through methods already mentioned. Okay? Now, is there anything else? Irritable bowel syndrome, chronic, just the list goes on and on. Diverticulitis, diverticulosis, these are all diseases of the GI tract that come from diet. And, more and more, I'm starting to understand as I practice at the higher levels of healing that we really need to cut down on the meat eating. Again, most of you are addicted to meats. Here. Most of us are addicted to meats. Most of us don't understand the seriousness of eating things with heads, brains, blood systems, nervous systems, stomachs, bowels, and eating other animals is probably not a good idea, especially when you are sick. You should stop all of the protein intake. The eggs. I just saw a naturopath on YouTube talking about he eats bacon 3 and 4 times a week. So he's eating pork 3 or 4 times a week, but it's okay because it doesn't have nitrous in it. Huh? He's selling vitamins through a multi-level vitamin company that is processed vitamins that has liquid sitting in plastic bottles that has synthetic but naturally derived vitamins and minerals. It's just ridiculous. Come on, naturopaths. Even most of the naturopaths ain't worth a shit because they don't understand that, a lot of naturopaths get treated like physicians. Disease thinking and then treatment for the disease. Now, they will not use pharmaceuticals for the disease. They might throw some herbs at the problems, and God knows that half of them don't even know the proper herbs. The study of herbs is a science unto itself. And all naturopathic doctors have to understand, and all physicians should also understand the proper use of herbs. They should understand the proper use of herbs for detoxification. They understand the proper use of herbs for oxygenation. Yes, herbs can have iron in them, organic type of iron that can go into the bloodstream, build the red blood cells back up, and increase the oxygen carrying capacity of the red blood cells. Remember, cancer is a disease that usually you'll find cancer cells thriving in low oxygen environments. High oxygen environments, you will never find the cancer cell. That's why I like the breathing exercises. That's why I like to filter my air with good air filters so I can take deep breaths of the air and do my breathing exercises. And I'm in Southern California where it's polluted. So, and then we've got folks that want to smoke marijuana. And listen, I'm very familiar with the benefits of marijuana. It's been the stuff that's been studied for thousands of years. If you want to use marijuana, make a tincture, make a tea, blend it up in a smoothie or something. You can't, at this point, especially if you live in Southern California where every day it's like smoking 3 cigarettes a day, you can't justify putting smoke into your lungs on a consistent level. Now, if you're out in the tropics, if you're out in Central America, South America, the Amazon rainforest, a place that's pristine and clean, places in Africa, Costa Rica, Belize, where the air is clean and pure, Hawaii, certain parts of Hawaii, then you can get away with smoking the marijuana through the lungs, and it will have therapeutic benefits. But short of that, putting smoke in your lungs in this modern world where we're near cars, we're near pollution, where they're spraying, and now everybody has to be aware of the chemtrails that's up in the air, and that's coming down on us. And so it's not a good idea to be putting things in the lungs that you don't have to put into the lungs, especially smoke. So, I'm quite aware of the benefits that have been known for thousands and thousands of years of the marijuana or the hemp plant. Many therapeutic benefits, and that's why you see this movement now to legalize marijuana or decriminalize marijuana or make it available for use for medical marijuana. But again, I don't recommend putting it in your lungs. So, the physicians, mostly are good people, but we're ignorant. Mostly want to do the right thing and help the patient, but we're ignorant. Mostly have no idea that they've been brainwashed. Mostly have no idea, like most people, mostly have no idea that what the form of medicine that they're practicing is not of the healing arts. And we need to not throw away allopathic medicine or the MDs and the physicians, because sometimes it's necessary. Like I said, sometimes it's necessary at an emergent or urgent level to use a pharmaceutical. Some people would die if there were some pharmaceuticals to save their lives. So I'm not downplaying the use of pharmaceuticals, but when we have type 2 diabetes, when we have amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, when we have the disease where the quote, there's no cure, and you've gone through the allopathic medicine and now the things have become chronic, most of your physicians won't be able to help you. Now, and I urge physicians, please get your naturopathic training. Please understand use your knowledge to understand alkaline versus acid, understand what toxic acidosis is, understand how the body responds to inflammation, which is water, corticosteroids, cholesterol, calcium, and other minerals that go to the scene that have an alkalinizing effect. And that's why we see wherever there's inflammation, there's toxic acidosis that started it all off, and the body's attempt to put out the fire. Please refer to the article on chronic pain and what to do about it. Part 3. Part 1 and 2 was written, Part 3 is in video form. Please go look at that. It is nothing more than a lesson in physiology and on understanding toxic acidosis. Now, the physician can't treat high blood pressure. And then some of the naturopaths are saying, well, let's use garlic. Well, we now understand that garlic is probably not a good herb to use on a very long-term basis. So we've got to throw that out. Again, this is why I'm saying it is important to understand that even when you move from the allopathic side into the naturopathic side, you have to go to the higher forms of even naturopathic medicine, or else you're going to have your goose cooked. Your butt will be in the fire, and yet you think you're going to be doing well. All right, and most of you are still taking the freaking vitamins and the vitamin isolates and the, anytime you take an isolate of something, it pushes the body in an unnatural direction. Now, unless there's an absolute need to push that body in a particular direction because it's so out of whack on one side, we don't use vitamin isolates. We don't use mineral isolates because nature's already solved the problem. It knows how to give us vitamins and minerals in the proper form, in the proper bioflavonoid complexes, in the proper food complexes, in the proper ratios that Mother Nature and God decided. But then again, we want to play with Mother Nature and God. We want to hybridize the plants. We want to bastardize the herbs. We want to spray the herbs. We want to talk about consciously grown herbs when the only good herbs are organically grown herbs, and even they're becoming weaker. And wildcrafted herbs are they're the strongest herbs. But you know, so many people now, or at least coming out of the sleep and slumber of vitamins and vitamin isolates and vitamin C and vitamin D's and all this other kind of nonsense, and understand, no, we have to go to the fruits, the vegetables, the herbs, the funguses. But when I say funguses, I'm talking about mushrooms. And no, we can't put mushroom in the same category as a fungus, like a yeast, like candida rather, because mushrooms, most of them, if you know what you're doing, the portobello mushrooms, the shiitake mushroom, the reishi mushroom that stands at the top of all mushrooms, are very healthy for you. They're very good for you. They're very alkalinizing, right? They have a lot of potassium. They can they have anti-cancer effects. So if I were to make a compound with anti-cancer effects, which I'm now working on, not for the world, but for my father, then we would use these mushrooms. Or reishi mushrooms would be at the top of the list. And then we can use other compounds that we know don't really cure cancer. Because cancer is not a disease, it is a condition of the body that is caused by mucus, cellular obstruction, lack of nutrition, lack of hydration, toxic acidosis, inflammation, cellular degradation, and then damage to the cell, and then the tumors and the cancers that are growing are a reaction to really trying to help the body deal with the toxic overload. And so you take away the toxic overload, then the body can begin to cure itself of cancer. So, but of course you can give some compounds, some natural compounds that actually interrupt the cancer from feeding. You can interrupt the cancer from cellular division at such a rapid rate and give the body a chance to then go after it with your immune system. And cancer is not an issue. So I'm not worried about it. What I'm worried about is that we begin to understand the condition that's behind most diseases, and we begin to deal with that condition. Okay? It is a condition in the body. It is systemic. So if you have cancer, if you have all these bowel diseases, remember, it's not just the bowel. We have, metastatic cancer because one cancer was cut out in a certain part of the body and it showed up in another part of the body. Well, of course it's going to show up in another part of the body if you're a physician and you don't tell the patient, hey, okay, we cut the cancer out, but that doesn't cure the cancer. What do we recommend? Well, the smart physician, the educated physician that is thinking outside the box, recommends sunlight, oxygenation, nutrification, detoxification, alkalinization, good sleep, staying away from disharmonic electromagnetic frequencies, chanting, meditation, dealing with emotional issues that are baggage that cause us to have negative thinking, okay, that keeps us asleep. And remember, the foods that we eat right now keep us in a state of slumber, keep us in a mental fog, so we can not wake up. So physicians, mad scientists, I implore you, you must educate yourself further. You must think outside of the box. If you don't, it is malpractice in my book. Now, can you be sued for that? No, because the system has it set up for you to be a robot. The system has it set up for you to not think about what you're doing. The system has it set up for you to say, you have an acid problem in your stomach? Here's an antacid. You have a high blood pressure problem? Here's an antihypertensive will bring it down. And for 30 years, they're managing high blood pressure instead of curing it. Jesus. We can't do any better than that as physicians. It's sad. It's sad. But it's encouraging because I am seeing more and more of the doctors, the MDs, the physicians waking up, but not fast enough and not enough for my liking. And so if we don't wake up, if we don't start thinking outside of the box, if we don't get some extra training as a naturopath, and then begin to use both, and then of course we're going to use less of the allopathic stuff and much more of the naturopathic stuff, because that's where the money is as far as healing is concerned, not as far as ching-ching in the bank. So we can't be all about ching-ching in the bank. We have to be about our own spirituality. We have to be about understanding that that the patients you treat, you're not better than, you're not even smarter than them. They are your brothers, they are your sisters. It doesn't matter their race, their religion, their creed, or any of that stuff. It matters that they've come to you for help. They're trusting your health into your hands, which they should not anyway, because everyone should take full responsibility for their own health. But not everybody knows that. And so if they come to you, your job as a doctor, because remember, doctor means what? To educate. I forget the Latin term for the word, but doctor means educator, teacher. And remember what I said that I was. When my daughter asked me if I was going to the hospital to heal people, I said no. I said I'm going to educate people on how to heal themselves. But see, if I teach them how to heal themselves, and I teach them the concepts, and I give them the conceptual framework, and then we put the knowledge in, and then we take the right action consistently, and then of course if I become an example, not only to the patients, but to the other doctors, about what can be done. When my knee had a torn medial meniscus and they wanted to do surgery, I said, no, I'll heal it myself. My knee is healed. I just came back from playing basketball. Shout out to the Nets. Today's Nets Day. But it's cured. I didn't need surgery. Derrick Rose, all these other athletes that have problems with knees. And it's, what is it? Connective tissue. So the connective tissue has to be strengthened. It can't be strengthened in a mucoid environment, in a toxic acidosis environment, in a condition where the system is not cleansing itself. And see, what we need to do is allow the system to cleanse itself and get the hell out of the way. Okay? We can't have the naturopaths talking about eating carrots. So I'm kind of pissed at most of the naturopaths. Comfrey. That's starchy. Can you use it? Yes, but you got to be real careful. You got to be real careful about these herbs that are starchy. The macas. You can't go crazy with maca. It's starchy. Does it have some therapeutic benefits? Yes, at times, but again, it's starchy. So you want to be careful with the starches. Carrot juice, I don't even recommend ever. But yet we see people all over the place, naturopaths included, you need to have your carrot juice. Really? I'm going to do one message to the naturopaths at a later date. Okay, but this is for the MDs, the mad scientists. So I don't condemn the MDs. I understand they've been traumatized. I understand what medical training is like. I understand what the system is about. And I understand the effects of Obamacare. And then it puts the physician and the patient almost at odds with one another, because the physician's not spending time with the patients anymore. I go into the hospital, I have to talk to the other patients because they see me spending time with my patients, and then they wish that I was their doctor, and I said, I'm sorry, I can't be everybody's doctor. I have limits and boundaries I have to set, otherwise all my energy goes out of the door. But I will talk to them on occasion and try to educate them the best I can. But I feel sorry for them because, again, they have these type of doctors, or doctors that just don't give a damn, or doctors that won't spend the time with them, and doctors that don't see themselves as teachers and educators. They see themselves as treating of diseases that really have no basis in physiology other than understanding the issue of mucus, inflammation, toxic acidosis, nutrient deficiencies. And now with nutrient deficiencies, we got to be really, 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 really concerned about the minerals, because the minerals are the bioelectric conductivity of the whole damn body. It is the bioelectric conductivity of the cell. It is the bioelectricity of the nervous system, of the glands. And so, where most of us are running around nutrient and mineral deficient. I didn't say vitamins, I said minerals. So the money, as far as nutrification is concerned, is in natural minerals. So we have to have the herbs that are high in the natural minerals that the body requires. Now, this is running a little bit long, but I want to talk about another concept that I've been studying. And I've told you about it because I told you about eating like a gorilla. Now, why did I say eat like a gorilla? I said eat like a gorilla because as far as we know from historical records, which could all be bullshit, and it could all be a lie because most of history is bullshit and a lie. And remember, like Bob Marley said, half the story have never been told. And he is so right. Probably why he got what he got. The cancer of the toe at my ass. He was taken out. Matter of fact, all the great leaders, Michael Jackson, I don't call him a great leader, but I don't think he was a child abuser. I think that was BS. I think the guy was talking about unity and spirituality, and he started to gain a huge following, and he had to go. Propofol, by a black physician, doesn't matter what color he was, but by a no, that don't make no damn sense. He had sleep problems, so he had to get a anesthesia? Are you kidding me? No, I don't believe it, and never will. Martin Luther King, we know he was murdered. The Kennedys, we know they were murdered, but they weren't angels either. Well, nobody's an angel, but they had their own problems, and it's still following today. But I would have liked to see what their leadership would have done. I think that the country's really suffered a setback psychologically when the Kennedys were killed, both Robert and Jack, even though they had their problems sleeping around with Marilyn Monroe and all the other nonsense. But when they started messing around with the Federal Reserve and started talking about they're going to clean up we're in a corrupt society, man. When you start talking about you're going to clean up things and going to unify people, man, you become a target. I try and stay apolitical. I don't talk about parties. I don't care about the government at this point in time. You want to follow the government? You think the government's going to save you? You think Barack Obama's the savior because he's black? Go right ahead. Believe in your own delusions. This is business as usual, okay? So, go ahead. You think the FDA is a consumer group designed to protect you? Go ahead and believe in your delusions, all right? That's idiocy. But I'm not looking for government to come and save me. I'm not looking for government to come and educate me anymore. I'm not looking for government to tell me whether I need vaccines or don't need vaccines, whether I should be drinking milk or not drinking milk. I already seen enough inconsistencies and bullcrap with government, so I just stay on the sidelines of government. I don't vote. I haven't seen a candidate worthwhile voting for. Okay, and I'm not going to vote for somebody just because he's black. Although it's good to see that at least the consciousness of the people have embraced, a black president, so that's saying something, but they don't really say much. I don't vote for you because you're black, white, green, or yellow. I vote for you because you're spiritually awake. You have the goodness in your heart. You have the light focusing. You have your chakras of balance. You are spiritually connected to your higher self and to the cosmic consciousness of all, and therefore you are executing a soul mission based on that cosmic self-awareness, which I see in no politician. Matter of fact, I think anyone who's got that kind of spiritual knowledge and awakening probably is not trying to assume positions of power. Doesn't turn them on. It's not necessary. It's not something that would attract them. So you get really the lowest of the low in politics. Enough of that right now. I'm just trying to get the lowest of the lower physicians to wake the hell up and understand, the negative karma that's being created because of our lack of self-awareness, first of all, of our own lack of ability to heal ourselves, and then how the hell we're going to treat our patients again. The blind leading the blind is not a recipe for success. Okay, now, I've been studying genetics. In fact, I taught genetics for one summer back at Howard University. I quite enjoyed genetics. It's a fascinating subject. Proteins and deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid, RNA, DNA, and the coding for proteins and cellular division, and how this all differentiates into cells and gives someone different color eyes, a certain color hair. It's just a fascinating field. But what I'm discovering is that certain genetic types, and that brings me back to what I was talking about history before I got on this rant about the government, that as far as we know in history, our genetics are rooted in Africa. Now, somehow it tells me that that's not 100% true. I think that there's certain people's genetics that are rooted in Africa. There's certain genetics of people that are rooted into cold climates. There's certain genetics of people like the Indians and Mayans that are in the Americas, the South Americas, the Central Americas, and Mexico. There's certain that are in the Asian cultures, the Middle Eastern cultures, and the Nordic and European cultures. There's differences in genetics. Is black or white or red or yellow superior to one another? No, just different. There's no white man that's better than a black man because he's white. There's no black man that's better than a white man because he's black. And yet we will have people, our leaders, that tell us that it's true. No, that's insanity. There are differences, and those differences to be celebrated and embraced. And there are genetic differences. So I go to one of the experts on genetics, and that is a mind that has not been educated. That is a mind that has not been adulterated. That is a mind that has not been brainwashed in school yet. That's my 6-year-old daughter. And we start talking about race. And she goes, well, I'm not black. I say, yeah, based on the color of your skin, you certainly don't look like an African. She goes, but I'm not white. I said, well, you have white blood in you. Your mother's white. But your father's not white. Your father has African American in him, Indian in him, and probably some mixtures of white in there somewhere down the genetic line. I mean, these green eyes don't come from Africa. At least not that I know of. So then we start to get into the discussion of, well, what do the mixed race people do? The, quote, hybrid people. And she said, well, we are of the tan race. So we now have to even genetically account for genetics that have been mixed together. But in my case, I've looked at all the genetic pools, and so I've looked at the Indian race, I've looked at the black race from Africa, and the genetics there, and the food that's indigenous, the natural food, not the crap that they're eating now, because again, they've been taken over by Muslims, different religions, Christianity, European influences, and they're eating starch and blood, meat and blood, mixing it all together and think they're going to get healthy. Okay? It is a hard habit to break. So once you get that, it becomes a habit. It's a hard habit to break. And there's no African government right now. There's no government in the world right now that wants to break that habit of starch and blood. And the starch and blood will keep you stupid. It will keep you in a state of brain fog. And it will never allow your bioelectric, natural, living, high vibration self to express itself. You'll always stay dim like the light bulb that's half lit, or even only 20 or 25% lit. You never go up to zoom the full potential. And so when she said the tan race, I said, well, look at her. She's saying that the tan race or the mixed race has to also identify what is healthy for it. Because we have to give ourselves what is genetically called for. The Eskimo, the Nordic European, the South American, the Indian, and the black man in Africa all have slight genetic differences that call for differences in their approach to nutrition. Now, Dr. Sebi, who I've been studying for a while, is a very, very big proponent of this. Unfortunately, he focuses just on black people, for good reason, because black people have been really taken as slaves out of Africa. They've lost their true identity, and they think by wearing some African clothes and giving themselves African names, they've connected back to Mother Africa. That's not how you connect to Mother Africa, fools. That's not how you don't start quoting in Motep, the first physician, and think this is some great accomplishment. No, you learn how to eat what is genetically indicated for you, and that may take some experimentation. Right now, I am still 100% in the tropical diet eating. Dark green leafy vegetables, soft dark green leafy vegetables, mushrooms, herbs, and fruits, and more fruits. The berries, the melons, the strawberries, any kind of a berry, the goji berries, the noni berries, the blackberries, the raspberry, the herbs, the sarsaparillas, and so the moringa, and so forth and so on. The camus, some of the macas, grown in a good soil. The shilajits of the world, because that replaces the lost bioelectric minerals that the plants don't have anymore, because the plants can only have what they grow into. Where the soil is lacking in lithium, and we know that lithium is a mood stabilizer and a natural antidepressant, and so we wonder why so many people are getting depressed eating the crap. They don't eat enough fruits and vegetables to begin with, and then they eat a lot of crap that further depletes the mineral supply. It further it creates toxic acidosis, where minerals have to come to the forefront, calcium being one, but there are others that have to come to the forefront to neutralize this toxic acidosis. So you waste your minerals. You end up with things like bone fragility, osteoporosis, and then we treat it with Boniva, like the problem is a Boniva problem. And then we know that the Boniva rebuilds the bones in a very, very weak way, and then if you fall, you crack your bones with Boniva, then you have problems. You don't treat these chronic conditions with pharmaceuticals, is what I'm trying to say. There are some exceptions to the rule, but mostly you do not treat chronic conditions with pharmaceuticals because they cannot cure the condition behind the so-called disease, which is really an illusion, right? Just because the red flag is being waved in different areas and different parts of the body doesn't mean that it qualifies as a disease. It is a condition that needs your attention. So I was very smart of my daughter to create a new race called the tan race, but it got me to thinking that I may have to combine the African diet with the Indian diet and some of the European diet and see what works. Well, I know what works right now. Meat eating for me is not a good thing. So I've cut down the meat eating, and eventually my goal is to come off by this summer or earlier off of all meat eating. Do you have to come off all meat eating? No. You got to take a look at yourself and say, hey, what will work for me? I don't recommend eating pork 3 times a week, because even if the pork says no nitrates from Whole Foods, does it have racetopine in it, which is the new hormone that increases the muscle mass in the pig. Okay, Muslims, Elijah Muhammad got you off of pork. He wanted to get you off of all meat, but you would have killed him. Why? Because you're addicted to the meat. We're addicted to the food. We're addicted to the fried starches. We're addicted to starchy plants. We're addicted to processed starch. We're addicted to Kellogg's and Krispies and Captain Crunch and milk on top of it, and cutting a banana and putting a strawberry up and saying, look how healthy I am. We're raising our kids on this. We're giving them candies. We're raising our kids on dairies, which is a no-no. Okay? Hello out there, certain people. Dairy, I'm talking about cow's milk, cow's cheese, is not a good thing. But you can get addicted to that too. Hello, people out there, carbonated drinks is not a good thing. Even if it's carbonated Perrier, even if it's carbonated Voss, any type of carbonated beverage is not good for you. Therefore, it leads to toxic acidosis and, in some people, severe back pain or breakdown of your teeth. Please don't drink the carbonated water. Please don't drink the colored water. Please don't drink the Tangs of the world, the Kool-Aids of the world. This is insanity. Please don't drink the Gatorades of the world, the Powerades of the world. Any of the color waters all have to go. There's one color for water, clear. Okay, and then if you add something to it, then that's good. I'm on call today, so the phone's ringing, but I'm going to ignore that while I finish up. So, understanding your genetic predisposition. And right now, I'm in the camp with Dr. Robert Morris. I'm in the camp with Sebi to say that, yeah, we must eat the foods that complement our genetic predisposition, which means we have to historically understand who we are, what we are, just on the physical basis, so we can eat the proper plants, the proper diet, the proper fruits, the proper nutrients that our body will best digest, that is best digested based on our genetic predisposition. So now we have the tan race. I have to deal with the tan race. So my daughter says it's the tan race, then the tan race it is. But it really just brought up the thinking of genetic eating. Listen, we are really, really, all of us, including myself, mineral deficient. And so if we're not doing something to really add back the minerals into our everyday foodstuffs, we're gonna run into trouble. And this is why vegetarians run into trouble. This is why Paleolithic diets fail. This is why raw foodists fail. This is because they're not taking in, number one, their genetic predisposition, and number two, they're not studying it seriously enough to understand what is missing and how do we safely get these minerals back in our system. You can't just take a liquid concentrate that's been sitting in a plastic bottle and think that somehow that is healthy, because it is not. You have to get your minerals from natural sources that are already in the proper bioelectric formulation, that are still living, preferably, that your body can really absorb, that can light you up like the light bulb that you were meant to be on high alert. So with that, I'm going to stop. I think that I got to go answer the phone since I'm on call today. And so I'm surprised they allowed me to get through this whole interview without bugging me. But I will, and they're not really bugging me. I have people whose lives I'm responsible for. I have nurses that I have to protect, and I have patients that I have to protect. So that's what I chose to do, and that's what I'm doing. But of course, I'm thinking outside of the box. And so we're going to get into the subject of genetic eating a little bit more as I research it more. We're going to get into the subject of meat eating. We're going to get into the subject of bioelectric herbs, hybrid plants like carrots, like spinach, and how they can wreak havoc on the gastrointestinal tract and how they can wreak havoc in the body. You see, the natural side of medicine also has you cooking, just like the allopathics have you cooking, just like the standard American diet has you cooking, literally cooking from the inside out. And then we have idiots using microwaves. Let's heat the water in a microwave, and then, or let's put the herbs in a tea form, and then we're warming up in the microwave. You freaking nuts. You cannot use microwaves. Throw the microwaves away. They denature the proteins. They create substances never seen by man or the body, and it creates cancer and all the other toxic acidosis conditions, mucus. There's no wonder why we're having an epidemic of these neurological conditions like Alzheimer's, because of toxic acidosis, because of mucus buildup, because of the obstruction, because the cells aren't allowed to breathe and get rid of the waste properly, because we're not getting enough sleep, because we're stressed out, so the mind is constantly racing, because we don't have things in a proper perspective. And that's what this channel's about, getting things in the proper perspective. Education, education, education. Because my people die for lack of knowledge. But on this channel, no more shall that happen, because my mission is to continue to educate. And this is a mission of love. It's, I don't care if you're white, I don't care if you're black, I don't care if you're Asian, I don't care if you're Mexican, Latino, it doesn't really matter. We're all in this, it's a very tough life to be here on planet Earth to begin with. And for us to be picking up arms and shooting people and starting wars because we've been so damn conditioned to think, that our own, yeah, there goes the remote, but I'll get it. To think that our own brothers and sisters are our enemies is insane. Because one is Christian and one is Muslim and one is this, another religion and a different religion and a different color. I mean, all this separatism stuff is insane. And no wise man thinks that way. No spiritually evolved person, i.e. someone that is not brainwashed, who has let go of all those outdated modes, who doesn't go to the preacher or to the doctor to educate himself and doesn't even use the school to educate himself. Yeah, you may have to go to school by law, but you better be educating yourself outside of school. I had to get most of my good high-level training about healing outside of medicine, outside of allopathic training, okay? I got a good foundation with allopathic training, but when I got into understanding the true nature of the condition of the body that promotes diseases, that's when game over, okay? And that's when I can start to now put together synergistic compounds based on genetic thinking, understanding the tropical genetic roots of a lot of us, okay? But listen, the Eskimo, he eats mostly fish and proteins. Now, I gotta go do some research and see if that is actually keeping the Eskimo alive longer, like if he's able to live 100, 110, 120, 125 years. I gotta go do some research. I haven't heard of an Eskimo like that. So I don't think human beings are made to eat, a diet that's 90% fish or protein or animal. I just don't think any race on the planet was designed for that type of eating. But I'll do some research, and I'm going to continue to think about the tan race, the new race that my daughter's created. But I'm going to be thinking about these subjects that Dr. Robert Morse brought up, and the subjects that Dr. Sebi has brought up about, the African diet, the genetics of based on your predisposition from history, from where you come from where your roots are, and how you approach that. Because this is a whole new frontier that most naturopaths have no idea. Some of them are just starting to get there. Some of your high-level ones, these are the spiritually awake ones, are starting to get there. And again, we don't say that one race is better than another. We just say they're different, and they may need a different approach. They need a different approach to detoxification. They need a different approach, a slightly different tinge of bent in terms of their diet, nutrition. But we all need sunlight. We all need nutrification. We all need the minerals. We all need the bioelectric fields of the body. We all need the nervous system to turn on like a light bulb. And we may have to do it a little bit different. But right now, I'm still promoting the fruits and vegetables and herbs and mushrooms, pure water, light, oxygenation, sleep. Also, now we can get hyperbaric chamber, portable ones I think you can get them for as cheap as $800, which you can go in there and it actually will force an oxygen-rich environment, will increase the oxygenation in your body. But before you do that, you need to have the right iron in your body, so your hemoglobin, natural iron, so that you're not ferrous sulfate, doctors. Ferrous sulfate don't work. It has to be natural organic iron that your hemoglobin can absorb, and then be able to carry that extra oxygen into areas that may not be so oxygenated. So exercise oxygenates, yoga breathing oxygenates. So it's a big thing. We'll talk more about oxygenation. We'll talk more about water, the different types of waters. A lot of videos to come. So I'm excited. I know this thing has gone longer than even what I wanted it to go, but I'm a talker, and there's a lot to be said, and so we want you to watch these videos, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes at a time. Some of you who are really interested will watch the whole thing, and then you go look at Dr. Sebi's videos, you go look at other naturopathic videos, you go look at Dan McDonald, you go look at Lou Corona, you go look at Robert Morse, and the list goes on and on. And I'll get some more names. Laura Lottman, who will go talk about fasting, okay? Because I don't care what your genetics are, fasting, and when you're sick, slowing down what they're eating or not eating at all, and fasting is also quite therapeutic and a major detoxifier. But you can actually get yourself into trouble. I've seen people go blind fasted. Why? Because as the body's pulling out all this mucus and all this toxins, if you have a lot up here, it can blind you temporarily. I've seen people days at a time go blind, and then their sight returns to them better than it was. So there's some very interesting things going out there in the field of healing, okay? And also therapeutic interventions. But we know therapeutic interventions are therapeutic interventions, not healing, because they don't actually neutralize the condition that causes disease. So with that, I'm going to go answer this phone call from the hospital. Peace, power, prosperity, and most of all, love to you and your families. Dr. Z, signing off.